So that, I think, it might be, a very important part of the puzzle as to how it is that the divorce factor is another thing. If the divorces keep getting more intense, see, that breaks a kid's heart. I was 7 years old when my parents got divorced, and I cannot imagine a sadder thing in my life. If I think about that, that was really sad to me. Because it kind of happened at the peak of happiness in my life too. I remember the show Happy Days came on, and it was weird because it was going to be Happy Days, So I'd get my Jiffy Pop out every night and pop some Jiffy Pop and go in the living room and watch Happy Days, and it was really happy. We had a decent house. And we had a nice yard with these trees in it, and grapevines out there, and a nice garden. And I would sit in the yard in the afternoons. And in the winter, I'd pile up these hills of snow next to my driveway and climb on these mountains of snow that I would pack up there. And I had a really happy life, I thought. Really, I was starting to know that how secure I had felt. I had a good doctor, Dr. Maimon, and I felt good about I suffered from bronchitis. I had very bad bronchitis. When I was in the wintertime, I would get a couple of attacks of bronchitis, and that took me to Dr. Maimon's, and then I would get that radiation. But, I was happy. It was happy days. But then my mom and dad suffered unhappiness at that time because I think it had to do with something that they couldn't agree with the church thing. The church thing was not agreeable to them. My dad was pretty happy with Catholicism. And my mom didn't want to be part of the Catholic Church anymore because the Catholic Church had told her in Iowa when her first husband was being brutal to her, and he had an accident with her and nearly killed her. They said, we can't give you an annulment because you don't give as much money to the church as some other people that she mentioned to them. She mentioned, why were the Lentzes and why were the Velkses and why did the Shiviks, why were they able to get annulments? And then she was told, you didn't give that, your family doesn't give as much money to the church. And this kind of got her off on a very bad foot because she was the kind of person who said, forget the church then. She abandoned Catholicism. I would have complained. I would have complained to the hierarchy of the church if I were her. And then the priest would have been told, if you make comments like that to other people, you're not going to be a priest at this church anymore. But that's how she handled it. So that kind of introduced the division into the marriage, even just as it got started, that they couldn't have the same church together. But again, these are just things they're aspects of how it is that people come to be less unified, and it comes down to money. That people don't have enough money, and so that is a lot of what divides people and prevents them from satisfying their happiness. But they don't see that it isn't really the money that's the issue. It's the sociality that you can have if you have the money and you spend it in the right way. Because there's a lot of people here that end up getting a lot of money, but they still keep chasing those kinds of sexual desires and material desires on to death, and on to unhappiness. And so it's this deeper issue of how we're educated and when we're educated and the objects that are shown to us as important. And it can be remedied by the individual, and it can be remedied by a few individuals. As I said in an earlier post, maybe the answer is small communities of like 12 people where you maintain the continuity of a whole lifetime of friendship, or from the moment that you found that commune of 12 people that's not based purely on sexual. See, there has to be, every kind of relationship has to be mirrored in the community that you're in for people to see that what's really satisfying them is that they have friends that they can count on, that they have a friendship forever, not because the fear of abandonment, the fear of loneliness, the memories that young people have of when there was a divorce when they were young, or when their parents were fighting and how they felt fear. All these go into the formula. And so we have to look for that because it hasn't been given to us. And, it's like this, for Marx's figure is Prometheus, that we have to, almost like Prometheus, you almost have to take the fire and you have to possess it. But it's knowledge. It's not money. It's not like I said, it's not taking the diamond mines back, because what would people do with them? They'd still destroy themselves. It's not knowing kind of what the right things are that can guide you. And this I take to be something that is part of what Plato teaches as well as he might teach how it is that you can impose these kinds of divisions and then maintain a hierarchy. He also teaches the individual that through philosophy and through reflection and through thinking and through attempting that way, you can come to repossess the wholeness and unity that you lose.